Marketing, entrepreneurship, and all things small business. You're listening to the Profit 911 podcast. Now, here's your host, Justin Miller.
All right, we're back for another episode of the podcast. We got three people around the table.
I just want to call you Harvard now. I'd be like, hey, Harvard, what's up?
Hey, they might not know about that yet. Sometimes we don't record these in order. Sitting at the table, I got Kevin, my co-host, but right next to me, I went to our floor back here, and I grabbed our project manager. This is Al. Al, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you. Thank you very much.
Al is project manager. His job around here is to keep things on track, and I've basically tasked him with making sure stuff goes faster. So he comes from an Air Force background, which I figured they got things that go fast, so that would make things go fast here.
Great analogy.
Way to look at it.
But so a lot of people are going to find this interesting. So you moved from armed forces to private enterprise, and not only just private enterprise, you came to work for a small company, which, like, people like me that run small companies, we look at government and all we see is waste. So I want kind of, and you had a little exposure to it, right? Tell me about, like family business that your dad runs that you had worked in. Tell me a little about that.
Yeah, my father owns a small landscaping, lawn care business, that kind of thing. And I initially jumped in with him coming out of the service. And basically, he was doing a lot of things that were less efficient than I thought they should be. So I really try to turn around his business plans about making things more technologically advanced, to say the least, because he was doing things like using, not even Word. It was like a knockoff of Word to do the mathematical formulas for him.
WordPad.
It was bad. It was rough.
Notepad.
Still uses it now to this day, Notepad. And so I'm trying to get him involved with that. But that's kind of been my first really, I guess, exposure to business I've had working for since 2001, whenever I was 16 years old.
Okay, so I mean, this was pretty early in your life then. So at this point, maybe it does make more sense and become more natural. But like, was there like culture shock when you got out of Air Force and went private enterprise?
There definitely is. A lot of things in the military are run like a business, especially the Air Force. It's kind of what the joke on the other branches have, is that we even have, even the fancy suits that the Air Force wears, the blues, they're even business suit looking. But it was kind of an interesting jump, to say the least, but it also helped because the Air Force is, like I said, the more business-focused type branch. We do track things, not necessarily money made, but money's made in the military in different ways. And I was a jet mechanic, an F-22 mechanic, and we made our money off of every time an aircraft took off. That to us was money. And on top of that, there was 1.5 million statistics about everything. Yeah. It tracked absolutely everything and how long this took, and down to the point where how long it took you to get, this much oil to that building and get it sampled in time type thing. So as far as tracking statistics and project management in general, I did have a good reach of that. I've done it for about, I was in the military for almost 2 decades. So the older you get, the more you get into project management type positions. So it wasn't a huge culture shock for me, but at the same time, it was because I was dealing in different metrics, I guess you could say.
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't even think about the dollars. You were thinking in terms of time and efficiency and things before. Whereas the entrepreneur, I naturally think about the dollar. I'm thinking, oh, that F-22, God, how much does that cost an hour to keep in the air? Good Lord. And then you were telling me some things like when you're planning, what is it, preventative maintenance? You're going to have to help me with terms here, but like they have to come in for maintenance for a certain point, and you might have pilots burn off hours just to hit the maintenance point so the plane's fresh. I explain because I probably butchered that.
No, that was exactly right. That was exactly right. And the average unit you have is what we basically call all the aircraft together. The average unit is about 30 different aircraft. And all aircraft were made at different times, and they all fly different hours. And you've got something that's we call it a phased inspection, or a planned out inspection, where you're going to do certain teardowns. You're going to end up tearing apart major parts of the aircraft and investigate the inside to make sure there's no cracks and things like that. And they need to be hit at exactly the right time. So sometimes you'll have aircraft that have been problem childs for us, and they've been breaking constantly. And you need to get those things fixed.
Wait. What's an F-22 worth? What did those cost new?
Billions.
And then you got ones that are lemons, huh?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. We call them either IFEs or penguins. IFEs is the in-flight emergency, and penguins because they're the birds that don't fly. So we do have a lot of different nicknames because that's the dirty secret about airplanes.
Oh, that's scary from the outside looking in.
The dirty secret about airplanes is they break all the time.
Great. Good to know.
Yes, exactly. The good thing is with fighter jets, you're usually going 3 times the speed of sound and you're pulling 9 Gs twice a day type thing.
This is good how?
Because those are the ones that break. The big whales you fly on, they just go at about, maybe 2 Gs at the most, and then you got kids puking everywhere. So it doesn't really work out for them. But as far as slotting out each different type of inspection and different type of maintenance, you've got 1.5 million different components on one aircraft, and every one of them's got a certain cycle where they're supposed to break down at 20 hours, 40 hours, whatever happens to be. And you have to track all those at the exact same time to make sure that you're getting this one done and it's not going to affect the flying tomorrow, and is that going to fly the next day, and how long does it take to get down, and what's the follow-on maintenance for that? Is there paint that's involved, especially the F-22? It's got a lot of paint. I'll just put it that way. A lot of paint that's special about it. And you have to plan out 8 or 9 steps ahead of time to make sure that you're getting the correct flow and you're not missing and wasting time, really.
Kevin, I'm going to bring you in on this because looking at it from a small business standpoint, the thing I instantly see is dollars flying out and I see waste. But when I hear this process, can you think of any business that understands the processes this much?
No, there's
their stuff together.
Well,
this much?
Really, there's a way more process there than I initially would have imagined. And as much as we complain about the government being wasteful, it appears that at least in some respects, the government has got their act together as far as process and the need to have things done. It's not like, well, my oil, it says I'm over my...
Maybe it's not wasteful. Maybe it's just expensive.
Expensive, yeah, but I think I'm sure there's plenty of waste as well. But it's not like when my car might be over the mileage and I'm like, I can change the oil next month. You're saying that when maintenance needs to be done, these are super expensive things, and we need to do the maintenance when it needs to be done or when it breaks.
Well, let's think of a business owner then as a mechanic of their own business. Mm-hmm. Do you think any business owner... Hell, you could even do annual. Do you think any business or many business owners take the time to, quote, break down their business annually, figure out what's broken, fix it, create a process, create guidelines to put it back in place? Mm-mm. Or have the specs? So, aircraft in particular, tight tolerances, right?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Like no room for error.
None. Yeah.
We get a lot more slack in our world as service providers, right? But do you think many people even have the brackets to know when something's way out of spec, if you will?
Maybe only if it's way out, because then it's obviously wrong or incorrect. It's when it might be slightly off the track or something's not quite right that you may not notice it, or you may not know what to do with it, so you just let it be broken, which leads then to more breakage probably, in theory. If you don't know how to fix it, you might recognize that it's not right, but...
So here's a question. This one's for Al. So how much of the mechanic work is preventative versus repair?
That's actually a really good question. There's a lot of both, to be honest with you. We call it scheduled versus unscheduled. Scheduled, we're predict out, and that's the perfect world type situation. Unscheduled is what happens constantly. Because let me give you an idea of what the average flying was for my last unit I was in, the F-22s. We would fly what would be usually called a 12 turn 10 turn 8, which means you take 12 aircraft usually in the morning time. It could be 7, 8, depending on the flying window's open. You fly 12 aircraft. When you're flying 12 aircraft, you're actually getting about 15 ready because you have probably 3 spares and they're ready to go. You'll fly 12 aircraft and all 12 will take off at the same time. They do their thing, and when they land, you're supposed to take 10 of those 12 and turn them for the next go, which would be afternoon type thing, noonish type. And then of those 10, you'll turn 8 of those also in the same day. So you're constantly going on and on and on and flying. And the reason the numbers keep going down is because they're going to break. And that's what they do best as they break. They have a joke that aircraft break when they fly. They also break when they don't fly. So you need to fly them, but you don't need to fly them too much, but you also don't want to fly them. And it's really a catch-22 on all aspects of it. But there is a lot of scheduled maintenance that happens. We get sheets and sheets every day. I should say they get sheets and sheets every day of maintenance that they have to knock out. And ideally, an aircraft won't break at a time, or if they do break, it'll be somewhat of an easy fix type thing. But oftentimes, for every flight, you'll break for something. Like if it's a landing gear issue, you're putting an aircraft in the air, and then you have to have certain places for it. And what's the winds at? And do you have the parts? And do you have qualified people to jack it? And if you can't jack the aircraft in the air, you have to put it on the ground. And to put it in a hangar, does there hangar space? Does this hangar space have power capability? There's 1.5 million different steps gets involved. Whereas scheduled maintenance, you do it all the time on every aircraft. And it may be not as often for certain pieces, but you can at least forecast out and say, oh, last time we had this, so let's project that out. And you can really slot the time out much easier. So you spend less time on scheduled maintenance because it's done more often. But
I think a lot of business owners neglect the scheduled maintenance in their business.
Yeah, I would say they're more worried about the stuff that breaks or the immediate need.
Putting out fires.
Yeah, putting out fires, immediate need versus, and I don't know if there's a correlation to scheduled maintenance causing less fires. I would hope that's the case. I mean, in theory, and less problems. But yeah, I imagine a lot of small business owners, and me included, a lot of times it's just running around putting fires out.
Yeah, let's take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to ask about how and if this changes under times of crisis, because we have those in business. Surely the military has them as well. A little bit different stakes, but we'll be right back.
When you listen to a podcast, do you think to yourself, I wish I could do that? I'd like to share my product, my service, my business ideas. Well, we can help you with that. At Kevin Walker Media, we specialize in helping you plan, execute, and then share your idea, your podcast. We can even help you create a video podcast if you'd like. If you want more information, hit me up, 563-508-3418, or email me at kevin@kevinwalkermedia.com. We'll come to you on site 1 or 2 days, depending on your needs. We'll help you plan, we'll help you record, we'll help you execute, and then we'll share your message, your podcast with your listeners, with your potential clients as well. So if you need help with that, hit me up, 563-508-3418, or email me at kevin@kevinwalkermedia.com, and let's get your idea off the ground, share your good news, and get your podcast started.
And now back to the Profit 911 podcast with your host, Justin Miller.
We're back, and we have an interesting one. We are talking to Al, my project manager, about his Air Force experience, but ultimately, how we can relate that experience to operations within your business, which is an interesting comparison, but actually dead accurate when you dig into it. So we had talked a little bit about scheduled versus unscheduled maintenance. In business, you might think more upgrade, but then we turned the corner a little bit to talking about putting out fires, basically. And now I have to specify I'm talking about in the business and not with aircraft.
Yeah, not actual fires.
I've done that.
Not engine fires. And I want to talk now a little bit more about times of stress and crisis. So deadlines pushing, and maybe it'll be when aircraft are in combat versus training, whatever your experience is there. But from the small business standpoint, we always feel there's a crisis. But a lot of times we end up with what a legitimate business crisis is. We lose a key person. We lose a key account. Cash flow is struggling. We're having trouble hitting payroll. So I'm kind of curious from this keep the aircraft flying, which is keep the business running, what changes when we're in some sort of crisis or having a response to something versus doing preventative?
Sure. There's different aspects of it. When you're at home station, I was stationed in Florida for a few years, and we'd have hurricanes come in out of nowhere. And when I say out of nowhere, they'd be a couple days out, but you never really know what they're going to be, so you got to prepare. So basically, you're dropping what you're doing, and you are, I don't want to necessarily saying you're slacking a little bit on the tightness of how everything's going to go, but you're more focused on getting the aircraft out because you got a hurricane coming. That's whenever everyone turns and everyone basically gets on board in the same idea, and they turn the aircraft and they get them out of
So
town.
are we throwing more manpower at it at this point?
You can be, yes. You basically, the Air Force has fixed everything as just mandatory 12-hour shifts. Everyone's on 12-hour shifts. That's the end. which there's debates on if that actually helps really make things happen, because you still got to do turnover time, and you can't technically work past your 12 hours and things like that. So there can definitely be putting more people on. Whenever I was working in a section, I would actually put people in alternating shifts, stacking shifts, to build up times that I knew we needed more people at certain times. I'd bring in what I call the cavalry crew. They would come in at the end, and, hey, I'm ready to go. And they would fix whatever needs to be fixed, type thing. It actually worked out really well. But it's always a stressful situation. But whenever you add things like hurricanes, or I was stationed overseas for 7 years, and we deployed often for that time to Afghanistan and Iraq and Israel and all kinds of different places like that. And when you go there, it's a different mentality. You are more focused on getting the aircraft in the air. So they're deployed all over the world. Even right now, they're out there deployed. You're flying basically 2 aircraft 24/7. 2 go up, two more come up, those 2 come down, the 2 come up, 2 come down. Constantly 24/7 you have aircraft flying. And that is whenever you are finally, what I consider you're finally doing your actual job. That's for the Air Force. Because all the rest of the times you're training, you're getting ready to do it. And when you're in Afghanistan or where it happens to be, you're actually doing the job. And that becomes very, very important that you get these aircraft in the air. I don't want to say how to properly say what you got to do, but you've got troops on the ground, and when you're flying these 2 aircraft, especially my times when I was in Afghanistan and Qatar and things like that, you will do alert also. That's when something will pop off, and you'll have to send your alert aircraft up on top of your 2 you may have or 4 you may have in the air at the same time. That's whenever horns will honk. Everyone honks their horns in the vehicles, and absolutely everybody runs to the alert aircraft, and you get them prepped. You spin them up. You have about, by the time, it's like a minute and a half to get them off the ground, because somebody somewhere, one of our guys, one of our allies, is in trouble, and you're sending in the warbirds, the F-15Es, when I worked on them. You're sending the warbirds in to correct the situation, to put it nicely.
So I'm trying to think. So crisis response. Boy, I don't have anything in my business I have to respond to in 90 seconds. Thank God. Thank God.
Not that fast, no.
It would never happen.
But it's good. I mean, I started out the job, I had a beautiful full head of hair, and now here I am. So it can be definitely a stressful job. And whenever you're, like I said, you're responding to alert aircraft, everything drops, and you're going on it, and you're getting the mission done no matter what. And I would say that's the overarching theme of what the military really teaches people, is you've got a mission, and you got to get it done, and I don't care what's in the way. We're going to find a way to get it done, type thing.
Here's a question then. So what often happens in small business when we come under fire, and of course everything's a double entendre now, not intentionally, but whenever we come under fire, we can only see what's happening right now. We lose sight of the bigger picture. We don't do that maintenance to keep things going. We aren't looking in the future and scheduling out. My question is there a parallel then in the Air Force experience? Is it all mission now? Or I assume, the aircraft still have to be maintained. I actually think you probably would have your stuff together better than a small business owner. But tell me a little about that, how priority and focus shifts.
Yeah, well, the main thing I want to stress about the military is, compared to small business at least, is whenever you get a small business, you kind of get to choose who you're going to work with. You can say, I'm going to hire you, I'm not going to hire you. And you got experience and you don't. In the Air Force, you've got a lot of 18, 19-year-old adults, I should say, and they're coming in from a variety of backgrounds, and you're having to corral them into a certain direction.
We feel that way about all employees. I'm sorry to tell you.
Yeah.
It might be literal in your case, but employers feel that way.
That's
even
good.
With skilled labor. So.
But you have to basically, you're able to corral them and get them in the right direction. The good thing is that when you have a lot of experienced people who've been doing this for multiple decades, you're able to focus more and learn from your mistakes. And to be honest, the military has done a good job in the last, I would say, decade or so of realizing that business has a way of figuring things out better than the government does, because you're focused on, the bottom line type thing.
Yeah, we cease to exist if we lose cash flow.
Exactly.
Pretty quickly, too.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And finally, I'm seeing the military is finally embracing this idea and actually bringing in some business leaders to help correct issues, which I think is very important, because you brought up waste before, and waste is a very major problem in the military, and it always has been. And as long as you're got leaders who are focusing more on not so much waste and actually getting things to run properly. You can actually get things to run more efficiently. But I'm thinking that the business idea is actually getting more involved and more influential in the military.
And here I am trying to steal lessons from the military, and they're trying to steal them from private
Steal
enterprise.
it right back, yeah.
Man. Let me kind of ask about, there's more people in the military than most businesses, obviously, even within one little section of it. But when you're in that crisis response, do job duties shift, or do we still have the person whose job it is to watch the preventative schedule, and then someone else's job is dealing with crises?
Basically, your jobs stay the same. You only really get promoted, demoted out of the job, I guess you could say. And when I say promotion, I don't mean you're getting more stripes or whatever happens to be. Promotion could be more of like you're getting put in charge of this section or whatever. And congratulations, your pay is not increasing at all, but you're going to have more responsibility.
Oh, they learned that from private.
I would say that sounds like private business.
There you go. See, I'm telling you, they're learning things. So your jobs generally don't shift unless you've been pre-pointed out to either move to this position or that position, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So your jobs will stay the same, which even when you deploy, your jobs are the same. And they actually, at least for the Air Force, I can't really speak much for the Army and Navy and things like that. But for the Air Force, you generally stay with the job you're at because you've been doing that one for X number of years, X number of months. You've been trained to do it. You've got it figured out. And if you don't get it done properly, they will move you out very quickly. So there's a lot of that, which helps you as a military member, helps you being able to learn things quickly, adapt quickly, and get on board with whatever needs to be, or at least look like you're getting on board, which is what I do every day. So. Look like you know what you're doing.
No, I just want to drive that point home a little bit, though, because things don't change then under crisis. The Air Force has processes, procedures. The businesses don't. Most of them don't. Or the owner thinks what they're going through in their head has to involve everyone in the company. So we'll say cash crunch is the example. So payroll, every owner's had this. Payroll's coming up. They don't know where payroll's coming from. Should that affect the rest of the team and their jobs? The answer is no. Mm-mm. But will it? And I think in a lot of companies, even if it's not stated, they can tell something's wrong. And the eye comes off the mission for a little bit.
Yeah, stress of the owner in meetings, or shortness or lack of attention to detail because he or she's worried about meeting payroll. Yeah, I don't know how it doesn't affect.
Yeah, so I think we have something to learn here as far as job specs and duties and how that plays into the mission, keeping your eye on the long-term mission, being able to deal with crises and it really not affecting the business as a whole. Yep. Air Force goes on. You said that's the real work. In our case, when we're responding to a crisis of some sort, it's the pain in the ass. But if it doesn't get overcome, the business doesn't exist anymore. And I think that's critical. I think that we should really just steal the concept of scheduled preventative maintenance. I call it's going to be planning, business planning. I think it gets neglected. I think we are in repair mode, which if we're talking aircraft, things fall out of the sky. The fall out of the sky is not as obvious in small business, but it rears its head several different ways. We have employee problems, we have morale problems, we have turnover, we have cash flow issues, sales are down. These are all the things that are the lagging indicators of major problems that weren't responded to properly or the process wasn't there to start with. Kevin, any quick questions before we wrap this one up?
No, I really like that last point about some semblance of preventative maintenance could prevent many, many fires.
Yep.
And just the ability to stop putting out fires for a minute and then think strategically and plan a little bit can cause a great upside.
Yep. And I want to thank Al for being stolen from his desk for a while. I think we're going to bring him back because I think we have a couple other angles we can play on this one that would be very instructive as well. As far as what he's doing behind the scenes here. But we are out of time, so thank you again, Al, and we'll be back next week.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Profit 911 podcast. Be sure to subscribe and leave your comments. For more information on how Profit 911 Consulting can help grow your service business, visit profit911.biz.